I'm Tina Fordham, and you're watching The Navigator, where we look at the geopolitical developments that matter most for markets and the business environment. The topic for this episode is obvious: the flurry of executive orders, dramatic policy actions, and tariff threats that have been announced by the Trump administration during what has been an eventful first 3 weeks in office. I'll unpack the implications of these developments and what C-suite leaders should watch for next. Well, as the year began, hopes were quite high that the return of Donald Trump to the White House would bring positive changes, certainly for financial markets, but also for citizens in many countries of the world, especially India, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and China. In India, 84% of the public said that Trump's election would be good for the country, and 61% in Saudi Arabia. By contrast, we see much less optimism about Trump's return in the EU, UK, and South Korea, traditional US allies. Just 15% of Britons think Trump's return will be good for the UK. Having said that, this survey data was taken before Trump took office, and the risk of a trade war became real. The direction that tariff policy takes from here is going to be highly relevant this year. We regard the reprieve for Canada, Mexico, and Colombia as temporary, and the threat of tariffs is more than a negotiating tactic. Notably, Trump came into office for the second term with approval ratings slightly higher than when he left, and with 59% of Americans optimistic about the next 4 years. However, polling now shows 48% of the U.S. public becoming more skeptical about whether or not tariffs will help the economy, and Trump's approval ratings have shown a slight decline. Another source of concern, according to U.S. public opinion, is Elon Musk, whose Department of Government Efficiency has helped drive federal spending cuts, including the controversial recent freezing of USAID. Survey data shows the U.S. public becoming increasingly conflicted about his role in government, with 54% disapproving. Both of these examples highlight how quickly political capital can erode and how the window for big policy moves keeps shrinking. While most observers are focused on what Trump will do next, we think the impact of a global backlash is underpriced. Respectively, the EU and China are said to be preparing retaliatory measures, but the bigger question arising is whether the world can afford to decouple from America, which is, of course, the world's largest consumer market. Until a few weeks ago, this seemed unthinkable, but we've raised the question before. What does it mean for the world if the U.S. no longer believes in free trade and feels itself to be the victim of the system it constructed? Turning now to our Navigator watch list for February, the risk of an all-out trade war stands out. In our view, the Trump administration's actions this week were not a bluff. At a minimum, they were a series of trial balloons, and more likely we should read them as an opening salvo and signal of future intent. Although the focus on the Middle East has been Trump's suggestion to take over Gaza, the key geopolitical risk in the region is the possibility that a maximum pressure approach will be adopted on Iran, capitalizing on Tehran's weakness following the undermining of its proxies, its aging leadership, and growing social unrest. Also this month, we have highlighted German elections as our political signpost for the year. They take place on February 23rd. Despite a 2-point boost for the far-right AfD in the polls, we remain constructive about the future political outcome in Germany, including the likelihood of an improved policy trajectory under a new center-right-led government. But we are keeping track of the AfD's support, currently in second place, and the erosion of the long-standing taboo about the party participating in a governing coalition. The composition of Germany's leadership matters a great deal for the outlook for Europe as a whole, relations with China and Russia, and future support for Ukraine. While Trump-related uncertainty is more than enough to keep us all busy, it is crucial to pay attention to how other countries and actors respond also. Washington doesn't control all the levers of power, nor the narrative, and assessing these highly fluid new power dynamics will be crucial for business strategy. There's everything to play for. There's a lot more to say, but we're out of time. As ever, remember the words of Louis Pasteur: fortune favors the brave, but chance favors the prepared mind. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our free newsletter to stay updated as events unfold.